Part 6. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 51. Chapter 51, Fight her. Beat her to death. Huo Dis stood up, and Zhang Shiwei paced back and forth, as if he would be unable to restrain the overwhelming power in his body if he stopped. Arian ignored her, stretched, turned around and lazily threw herself into the experiment. Her movements were slow and she looked like she was not at work. Finally adjusting her mentality, Zhang Shiwei looked at her again. Okay, what do you want? No matter what the conditions are, I will satisfy you as much as possible. In the current crisis, she had to endure it for a while. Instead of asking Su Yun to ask her, she would rather negotiate terms with the girl in front of her here. At least, she was still within her control. Glancing at her, Arian chuckled, "Oh, does Director Zhang have so much power? No matter what the conditions are? This sounds really tempting. Can he really do anything?" Seeing her cheerful look, Zhang Shiwei felt extremely contemptuous in her heart. In the final analysis, it was just a transaction. There was no friendship or loyalty, but the price offered was not enough. Since Wu Arian asked this question, it means that she really has something important in her hands. Zhang Shiwei cleared her throat and said seriously, "It's hard to say whether you have great power or not, but we have worked together for so long, although I'm just a director, but you must also know what kind of relationship I have with Mr. Luo. As long as you get this thing done today, I don't dare to boast about anything else. If I say a few words for you in front of Mr. Luo, I will definitely compare with you. Working in the laboratory for 10 or 8 years makes you strong, don't you think?" After pondering for a while, Arian seemed to be thinking seriously and nodded seriously. "What you said seems to make sense. But can it really be granted under any conditions?" She opened her eyes wide and looked very expectant. Zhang Shiwei found it a little funny and sneered in her heart with disdain, but she wanted to show a very sincere look on her face. "Everything is easy to talk about. What do you want? A promotion? Or, salary increase?" "I want a promotion and a salary increase, but what should I do? I'm so greedy." She frowned and admitted her greed, which made Zhang Shiwei unable to say anything. Zhang Shiwei smiled and said, "Greedy is normal. How can one not be greedy? This is no problem. Now can you tell me what went wrong with the essential oil formula? Hey, the terms haven't been negotiated yet, why is Director Zhang so anxious?" Arian shook her head and said disapprovingly. "Didn't I promise you everything? When this matter is over, how about doubling your salary and giving you the position of deputy manager of the company's R&D department?" Gritting his teeth, Zhang Shiwei felt that this condition was already very generous. With her qualifications and achievements, of course she is not matched, but it doesn't matter, let's pass the current level first. At worst, she will find an excuse and be demoted, or her salary will be reduced, and it won't all be a matter of her words. Who said I wanted that? Arian had always been careless. The more indifferent she was, the more she irritated Zhang Shiwei. This made her feel that she had always been in a passive position. "Then what do you want?" She kept asking questions and approaching step by step. Arian stopped moving her hands, clapped her hands, stood up and turned to face her. Arian looked at her with a half smile on her face. "Director Zhang, I want a salary increase. It's not as simple as doubling it, I want it to be increased tenfold." Hand made a figure of 10 with a smile. 10. Taking a breath, Zhang Shiwei thought, she is really a lion. But before she could say anything, she heard her say again, "As for promotion, you underestimate my greed. How can you satisfy me as a mere deputy manager of the R&D department? I want your seat." He pointed at her with his finger, and his eyes clearly said that she was not joking. Zhang Shiwei's face turned dark immediately. Although the promise to her was just a temporary measure, and these things could be turned away or taken away by her. It was too arrogant and presumptuous for her to ask for her seat. If she really promised her, let her what people in the company think, and what people outside think. Wu Arian had anticipated her hesitation and was not in a hurry to force her. She sat down again with a smile, put one hand on the back of the chair, rested her chin on the back of her hand, raised her head and said, "Oh, that's right. In addition, you and Suyun publicly apologize and admit that you are the one who stole the fruits of other people's labor. In this case, I will reluctantly find a way to help you." If Zhang Shiwei could endure it at first, now that she heard it, she was simply furious. Wu, Yan. Her name was squeezed out word by word, almost through her teeth. Zhang Shiwei's eyes burned with anger. "Don't go too far." Facing her anger, Arian didn't take it seriously at all. She smiled and said, "What Director Zhang said, why did I go too far? Didn't you just grant the conditions you said? Look, I opened it, and you did it, not happy. So, if you don't have that much ability, don't boast so much. Look, how embarrassed everyone is now, right? You. Okay, I know Director Zhang is joking with me, and I am joking with you too. The joke is over, everyone should still work hard. I have to work, and Mr. Luo is very anxious to get this batch of data." "Yes. Director Zhang, I'm actually wondering, don't you have to work? After all, you are also a senior perfumer. Logically speaking, your ability is much stronger than ours. At this time when the company is in crisis, you don't do anything to turn the tide and give us take a look." After teasing her, Arian happily picked up the test tube and started mixing it. No matter what conditions she wants to negotiate, her only purpose is to antagonize her. Beat her to death. Zhang Shiwei stepped forward and snatched the test tube from her hand. Yan. "Director Zhang, if you keep doing this, I won't be able to work. Stop pretending to be here. Since you're toasting and not eating, let's open the skylight and talk openly. What benefits has Suyun given you? Now she's gone and has moved to other places. Have you ever taken care of her? How are you doing here? Yes, I know that you were close to her before and spent a lot of time together, so it's normal to have feelings. But can feelings be used as food? What about you, if she changes her job and gets a high salary? What can she think of you if you stand up for her here? Think clearly, is your future career plan more important, or your temporary sisterhood?" "Director Zhang." Arian shook her head helplessly, and Arian sighed, "People like you don't understand. Not everyone is like you, and not everyone is unkind." Wu Arian, Zhang Shiwei wanted to say something else, but her cell phone suddenly rang. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 52. Chapter 52. Those two people are so funny. Zhang Shiwei took a look and saw that it was Luo Yuanhang. She could only glare at Arian fiercely and put the test tube back into her hand. "Think about it again and don't be stupid." After saying that, she turned and walked out. "Where are you?" he asked directly when he came up. "I'm in the laboratory." Zhang Shiwei felt aggrieved. "I'm not thinking of a solution. If Suyun refuses to help you, I can't ignore you. Wulan is our hard work, I can't just watch it's over just like that." "What's the matter? Don't say anything depressing. Just get ready and I'll come and pick you up right away." He seemed to be in a hurry, so he hung up the phone after saying that. He didn't know why he was in a hurry. After looking at the hung-up phone, Zhang Shiwei walked back and looked into the laboratory again. "Forget it, I guess there won't be any results. Instead of wasting your anger here, it's better to think about what to do next." She had to find a way out for herself. Not long after, Luo Yuanhang's car arrived at the entrance of the laboratory, and Zhang Shiwei was already ready and waiting at the door. She deliberately made her hair disheveled and her eyes were red. She looked like she had worked hard and was very tired. She said with a tired face, "Voyage." Before she could speak, Luo Yuanhang stared at her in surprise. "How did you get yourself into this? Didn't I ask you to prepare?" "I." She flattened her lips and closed the door of the passenger seat, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm not doing it for the company, so I'm anxious to get angry." "I know you're anxious, and so am I, so I thought I'd come back and give it a try. Can we get the results as soon as possible?" "Is there any result?" Although he could roughly guess the result, Luo Yuanhang still asked one more question with a little hope. Zhang Shiwei pursed her lips and shook her head. "Many attempts have been made, but as you know, the formula of essential oils is relatively complicated. Even just a single change in it will produce many different effects, not to mention that we don't know at all. It's not just that it's wrong, it's also..." She looked aggrieved, but Luo Yuanhang looked a little distracted. "Okay, Wei, don't talk about this. If it was so easy, we wouldn't have been restrained by Su Yun for so long, and she wouldn't be so fearless. Now I'll take you to pick someone up, maybe there's some way." Zhang Shiwei was stunned. "Who?" "Yes." Glancing at her, Luo Yuanhang shook his head. "There's still some time, I'll take you to dress up first. It's our first time meeting. Don't be rude." "Oh," she responded obediently, turned around and put on her seat belt. Luo Yuanhang looked at her gentle way of lowering her head, and the irritability in his heart was dissipated. It is undeniable that Zhang Shiwei is quite beautiful, the kind of fragile and pitiful beauty. When I see her and think of her nestling in your arms, looking up at you and relying on you, I feel like a piece of softness. In comparison, Su Yun is too strong. Although she was quite obedient, she always had her own ideas. Just like this time, she betrayed him silently. When he thought of Su Yun, he became very irritable. After fastening his seat belt, Zhang Shiwei noticed that the car hadn't started yet and looked up at him in confusion. "What's wrong?" With a thought in his mind, Luo Yuanhang clasped her chin with one hand and kissed her fiercely. Because of Chu Chen's sudden appearance, Su Yun's original plan was changed, and she returned directly to Yujing Haoding. It was just a fight. My bones were sore all over. It had been too long since I had exercised properly. After leaving the environment of the Chu family, she had been at ease for too long, doing what she liked and wanted to do. However, Chu Chen's arrival today reminded her that no matter how far away she was still a member of the Chu family. I was soaking in the bathtub. When I raised my hand, I saw a little bruise on my forearm. It may have been hit when I started. I will apply some ointment later and it will be fine. I raised my head and exhaled. Thinking of today's meeting with those two people, it was really boring. I thought I would be angry and hateful, but after we sat down and had a serious conversation, I realized that she just couldn't get along with her old self. The one who can't let go and is unwilling to do so is not these two people, but the sacrifice he has made. For so long, she gave up everything and devoted herself to one person, thinking that he would also be kind to her wholeheartedly. It was enough to have an intimate and a friend in this life, but she didn't expect that she was being teased. Is also stupid. Those two people are so funny. Laughing out loud, she shook her head and laughed at her own stupidity. The warm water relaxed her body and mind. She stretched out, closed her eyes and leaned back, and sleep swept over her deeply. So when Yao came back, he only heard the sound of water in the bathroom, and there was no response when he called her. When he pushed the door open, what he saw was someone leaning on the bathtub, his body sliding down softly. The speed was very slow, but it was obvious that she was sinking bit by bit. She saw that her neck was already submerged and her chin touched the water. However, she was not awake yet, and her downward momentum continued unabated. Su Yun, Yao called out urgently, walked over in a few steps, bent down and stopped her under the arm. Because of his timely stop, he stopped her sliding body. At the same time, Soo-yoon also woke up suddenly. Suddenly she opened her eyes. She didn't know what had happened. She stared at the face in front of her in surprise. Yao. How could? Before he finished speaking, he immediately realized the current situation, and almost reflexively wanted to protect his chest with his hands. You can't soak any longer, he said solemnly. Without saying a word, he picked her up from the bathtub, held her in his arms, turned around and strode out of the bathroom. Soo-yoon. Now she was really naked. Although he didn't look away, she was so embarrassed that she felt helpless. When passing by the shelf, Yao pulled down a large bath towel, then entered the room and threw the bath towel on the bed, placing her directly on the bath towel. Soo-yoon wanted to sit up when her body touched the bed, but she was a step slower than him. Yao pressed down directly. He was tall. The pressure caused her to fall backward due to the inertial impact, and human instinct made her stretch out her hands to grab something. Just like that. Her hands grasped the skirt of his chest, while he pressed against her body, making her close to her. Soo-yoon's mind went blank. To be precise, from the time she fell into a deep sleep to the time she suddenly woke up, and now, her brain has not yet gone through the digestion process. At this moment, it seems even more unsuitable for her brain to calm down and wake up. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Yao's face without blinking. Even at such a close distance, it was impossible to find any flaws in it. It was simply God's most perfect work. I had only seen two of them from a distance before. Last time, everything about him was just rumors, but now, they are so close, you can hear his heartbeat. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 53. Chapter 53. First time. She was about to speak, but Yao's index finger blocked her lips. Don't talk. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and she stopped talking. Just the quieter it was, the faster her heart beat. Being so close to him, her nose and chest were filled with his scent, and her eyes and heart were filled with him. Her mouth was dry and she swallowed. Her neck could be seen moving up and down obviously. Such unconscious movements were the most seductive. Yao slowly pressed his lips to hers. The lips and teeth are intertwined. It is not the first time that they are so unfamiliar. They are entangled together in a familiar way, and the heat in their bodies also rises sharply. After all, she was fished out directly from the bathtub. The water on her body was not completely wiped off. Yao carried her all the way out of the bathroom. His clothes were soaked with water and stuck to her back. On her body. This layer of soaked clothes allowed her to feel the heat of his body and the hardness of his muscles more directly. Yao's big palms moved around her body. Although Soo-yoon had become rusty in practicing martial arts in the past few years, her figure had been maintained very well. In addition to the foundation she had gained in the past, in addition to the original waistcoat lines, she had more. It was a bit feminine, and he couldn't put it down because of its feel. He could clearly feel the tension in his body. Yao reluctantly let go of her lips, stood up, took off his wrinkled shirt at a very fast speed, and threw it aside. Soo-yoon opened her eyes in confusion, and what she saw were strong and muscles. Unexpectedly, under the appearance of suits and leather shoes, he had a really good figure. It was obvious that he had maintained the habit of exercising all year round. Although his skin was white, it did not make people feel unhealthy, and it was not that dark brown. As he leaned forward, every line seemed to have a unique charm, making her unable to move her eyes away. Yao. She almost whispered, calling his name. Be good, call me husband, he said softly, kissing her cheek gently. Old. Her cheeks were hot and she couldn't scream. Those two words seemed to stick there, and when they reached the tip of her tongue, they forced themselves back. She bit her lower lip gently, her face so red that she could bleed. Het. Yao chuckled. He was not very attached to this. It didn't matter. There was plenty of time for her to get used to it and accept it. Yao's kiss was like a goose feather, gentle and a little ticklish. Su-yoon slowly closed her eyes. She knew what was going to happen next, but she had no intention of letting him stop. She had been mentally prepared since she got the certificate from him and agreed to it. Even though, she was still a little nervous. The physiological tension was out of control, making her body tense up. Although Yao's kiss made her relax a little, when she got to the last step, she immediately tightened up again, like a stretched muscle. The stringed bow. Her body was the most honest. Yao raised his head slightly and saw that her eyes were tightly closed, her eyelashes were trembling gently like butterfly wings, her lips were tightly pursed, and her hands were hanging by her sides. They were clenched into fists and squeezed tightly. This was not a sign of mutual love, it was almost like going to the execution ground. With a gentle sigh, his movements stopped. With no next move for a long time, Su-yoon opened her eyes in confusion and asked silently. At this moment, the passion in Yao's eyes had faded a lot, and his body was still close to her, but his hands only stayed on her forearms. Seeing her open her eyes, he said warmly, "Are you afraid?" Su-yoon shook her head, but hesitated and nodded again. She didn't lie, but from the bottom of her heart, she was still a little scared. Perhaps it's not that I'm afraid, but I still have some unclear feelings about this matter. Then, do you want to continue? He asked next. Su-yoon's face, which had turned into a normal complexion, quickly turned red again. How should you ask her about this kind of thing? Biting her lower lip, she nodded quickly, turned her face to the side, and stopped looking at him. Such shyness and bewilderment aroused deep pity in Yao's heart. He had never asked, to be precise, he didn't care much about this thing, but now her reaction made him couldn't help but ask. Sentence, first time. Su-yoon suddenly turned her head and looked at him, shy and surprised. Needless to say, her reaction gave him the best answer. Yao was silent for a few seconds, quickly stood up, took another bath towel to wrap her tightly, then pulled the quilt away and gave her another. She covered it. Seeing her staring at his actions, Yao bent down and kissed her forehead. Su-yoon held his hand and stopped him from getting up. She looked up at him with a slightly hoarse voice, "What do you mean? It's not the time yet." His eyes fell on her hand holding his, and her little hand held him tightly. This feeling of being needed made him very satisfied. Why, she didn't understand. You have already reached this point, why did you stop suddenly and ask her such a question? Will it affect whether this is the first time or not? She doesn't understand. Don't rush it now, wait until you are ready. Lifting up his other hand, Yao gently rubbed the top of her hair with great affection. That's right, he thought that what was supposed to happen had happened long ago during the years she had been with Luo Yuanhang, but he didn't expect that she was so green and unfamiliar in this matter, which surprised him and also made him surprise. He didn't care if it was the first time, but it was impossible for him not to care about her feelings. Obviously, she was not completely ready for this matter. She was as nervous as a frightened little quail. If he continued rashly, he would only get hurt. Happiness between two people should happen naturally and naturally. When the love reaches the extreme, everything will happen naturally and let nature take its course. That is the most beautiful thing. But he didn't want to destroy this beauty because of his temporary lust. Beautiful things deserve to be properly treasured and kept until the best time. However, Soo-yoon didn't understand his thoughts. In addition to his previous questions, she thought it was because of whether it was the first time that affected his decision. Two hands went to hold his hand, and she replied firmly, "I'm ready." Although his tone was firm, his eyes looked as if he was going to the execution ground. Sci-fi. He gently sat down next to her, stretched out his arms to hold her in his arms, and held her close to him. He gently held her chin with one hand, and their eyes met. Looking into her eyes, Sci-fi asked warmly, "Then, do you love me?" Soo-yoon. She didn't answer love or don't love quickly. This question was a bit too sudden for her. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 54. Chapter 54, Of course I love you. It is undeniable that she definitely has feelings for Si. After getting along with her these days, everything he has done for her, but when it comes to love, she is not sure whether her feelings for him have risen to the level of like. Si is handsome, rich, gentle, and considerate, and he always thinks of her when doing things. It's hard not to be tempted by anything. She likes him, but, does she love him? Si expected her answer. He smiled slightly and gently rubbed her lips with his thumb. "Don't worry, we have enough time. You will fall in love with me little by little." But. After a pause, he continued, "I will not finish the last step before that. Only when you are sure of your heart, will you really be willing to give yourself to me wholeheartedly." Seeing him letting go of his hand and standing up, as if he was about to leave, Soo-yoon came back to her senses and asked urgently, "Then do you love me?" He asked her if she loved him. She wasn't sure, but what about him? Turning to look at her, Si raised the corners of his lips and the light in his eyes was dazzling. "Of course, I love you." Soo-yoon. Looking at him with a shocked face, she still had a hard time digesting the sentence. She thought that he would also hesitate, or deny, or give it vaguely, but no matter which possibility, she did not expect that he would admit it so definitely and directly. Love her? They have not known each other for a long time. Why does he love her? Before she could ask, Si said again, "Okay, don't fall asleep again next time you take a shower. I don't want to risk my life before you fall in love with me. If not, if you're too tired, get dressed and come down to eat." She was the only one left in the room, but her rapid heartbeat could not calm down for a long time. "Get dressed and go downstairs. When you reach the stairs, you can already smell the aroma of food." Si is sitting upright in front of the dining table, with the bowls and chopsticks already placed. Today's dishes are particularly rich. Although the portion of each dish is not large, there are many varieties. Soo-yoon glanced at it and asked, "Did you order takeout?" "So be it. If it counts, if a 5-star chef specializes in custom-made food and delivers it to your door, then this is just another kind of takeout." Carefully picked out the spines from the fish, and then put the fish into her bowl with a very natural movement. Soo-yoon is not very used to it. She glanced at the fish in her bowl, then looked at Si who had put down his chopsticks and was peeling shrimps. "I'm not that rich. I can spit out the thorns myself, so you don't have to help me like this." "Who said I was helping you?" he said casually. "I just like to find fault." Soo-yoon put the peeled shrimp meat into her bowl, and then said, "And, peel the shells." The bowl was not big, but he filled it to the brim. It contained fish, shrimp, vegetables, meat, and eggs. It was rich in nutrients and tasted attractive. She felt that her heart was like the bowl in front of her, filled to the brim. "How long has it been since I felt such a feeling of being cared for by someone? As long as I can remember, I have to accept all kinds of rigorous education and training. When I grew up, I finally broke away from the shackles of my family, chose my favorite major, and did what I liked. However, later, I was ridiculed for losing the competition, and because of Ludo the matter of the long voyage completely broke with the family. Years of independence have made her develop the habit of relying on herself for everything, so it doesn't matter if Ludo Yun Hang can't accompany her. He has to be busy with his career. Every time after dinner, Ludo Yun Hang always pushes the bowl and chopsticks away and leaves. Everyone understands it, but after a long time, the heart will get tired. In Si Yao's body, she felt the pampering she had not experienced in a long time. Seeing that she was still holding her chopsticks, Si Yao asked, "What's wrong? Is it not to your liking?" I deliberately chose a few more varieties just to be afraid that they wouldn't suit her taste. "What kind of cuisine do you like?" "It doesn't matter what cuisine it is, what matters is who you eat it with." Taking a deep breath, Suyun smiled, lowered her head and took a bite of the food. "It's very delicious." And, he took the initiative to bring the food to Si Yao's lips. "You can try it too." He was stunned, looked at the chopsticks in front of him, smiled, opened his mouth and ate in, chewing slowly. Seeing him eating elegantly, Suyun thought for a while and said, "I thought about the question you asked me carefully. Indeed, I don't dare to say that I love you now, but it doesn't mean that I love you I don't love you. After all, we haven't been together for a long time. I think I will fall in love with you." If she hadn't been too serious, Si Yao would have almost felt that she was telling him a joke. She discussed the issue of love or not in a serious manner. It was really her. She didn't wait for his response, but saw him staring at her. Suyun thought he was not satisfied with the answer. "I don't want to lie to you, I just tell you what I think." "I know." He nodded with a faint smile. "I also said, there's no rush." Looking into his eyes, Suyun was sure that what he said was not against his will, and then she breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same time, the doubt troubled her even more. "But just now you said." After hesitating for a moment, she still asked, "What do you love me for?" There was a long silence. The air was so quiet that everything in the world didn't exist. There were only two of them, looking at each other. Suyun's eyes were full of confusion, but Si Yao's black eyes were complex, as if there were thousands of words in them. Slowly raised a hand and touched her cheek. Si Yao's voice was mellow and magnetic. He said slowly, "Everything, everything." Suyun's heart was beating so fast that it was about to burst out of her chest. When she looked into his eyes, the deep affection in his eyes was undisguised. Although it felt ridiculous, she had no doubt at all that he said he loved her. "It's just that this feeling is really fantasy." Covering his hand that was caressing her cheek, she squeezed it a little harder. "I will definitely fall in love with everything about you." Si Yao smiled slightly. After eating, Suyun wanted to clean up as a habit, but he was a step ahead. He directly picked up the dishes and walked into the kitchen. Then he threw them into the dishwasher, pressed the program, turned around and looked at her. "Everyone said yes, you are not allowed to enter the kitchen anymore." "As I said, I'm not that rich." Si Yao hugged her waist and said, "To me, you are more valuable than anything else." He lowered his head and kissed her forehead, then let go of his hand and held her wrist. "Here, let me show you something." Si Yao pulled her to the living room and asked her to sit down and wait. Si Yao went to the study and came out after a while with something in the form of a contract in his hand. "Take a look." He glanced again to confirm, then reached out and handed the contract to her. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. A very important person. Suyun took it with confusion. When she opened the cover, she saw that it was an insurance contract. The insured item is her nose, and the beneficiary is also her. As for the amount, all she could say was that it was such a sky-high price. Suyun was surprised and looked up at him. "Is it necessary to be so exaggerated? Is it an exaggeration, Yao asked, for you perfumers, how important the nose is. I don't think it is an exaggeration at all, and it is very necessary. Yes, that's right. The nose of a perfumer is indeed very important. In the field of perfumery, in addition to hard work, talent is often more important. A nose that can distinguish hundreds of different fragrances is more necessary than any acquired hard work. However, only a few top perfumers will spend a lot of money to ensure their noses. She is considered unknown now. Is it necessary to spend such a huge price to save her nose? For me, everything about you is very necessary. Yao took out a pen, stood up and handed it to her, signed, effective immediately. Looking at him, and then at the contract in her hand, she felt that he had brought too many feelings and touches to her. Signing her name, Soo-yoon closed the contract and said, "Thank you. Between you and me, don't you think it's awkward to use the word thank you? How about something more practical?" As he spoke, he clasped the back of her head with one hand and asked for a kiss from her. Soo-yoon stood on tiptoes slightly, put her arms around his neck, and responded to him enthusiastically and positively. Airport. Zhang Shiwei pushed up the sunglasses on her face, her expression already filled with unconcealable impatience. "Yuan Hang, who are we going to pick up? You haven't told me yet." She dressed up carefully, bought a new suit, put on makeup again, and followed Luo Yuan Hang to the airport. She only knew that she was here to pick up someone, but Luo Yuan Hang did not tell her who to pick up. "After waiting for so long, I am already very impatient." "A very important person, you have some patience." Although he comforted her softly, Luo Yuan Hang felt unsure. He just looked at the photo and had a rough impression, but after all, he had never met him in person. Wouldn't it be very troublesome if he couldn't recognize it or missed it? "I wanted to call again and ask, but the signal on the other end was busy and no answer. I was very worried, but I didn't want to show it." Soo-yoon's side seems to be unworkable. The woman is now extremely stubborn and refuses to listen to him at all. She is completely different from before, let alone Wu-Arian, not to mention that she may not I knew it, but now she was also trying to compete with him, and wasting time was clearly waiting for him to fire her. It was really annoying. I guess these were all learned from Soo-yoon, or were they instigated by Soo-yoon? My mind was thinking wildly, my eyes were wandering everywhere, and suddenly I saw a tall, thin foreigner wearing gold-rimmed glasses. He looked familiar at just a glance. Excited, he immediately took out his mobile phone and took out the photos for comparison. He looked at them twice. Seeing that the person was about to leave, he nodded with certainty, "It's him. It's him." "Who?" Before Zhang Shiwei could react, he pulled her forward and ran forward. "Mr. Rosen, Mr. Rosen," Luo Yuan Hang shouted while running, "Mr. Rosen, please stay." The foreigner really stopped. This made Luo Yuan Hang even more sure that he had found the right person. He raised a smile and said breathlessly, "Mr. Rosen, I came here specially to pick you up. My surname is Luo, my name is Luo Yuan Hang, and I am the president of Wulan Company. Ms. Yao should have mentioned it to you." Following Luo Yuan Hang, Zhang Shiwei looked at the foreigner in front of her in confusion, and then at her boyfriend who couldn't hide his flattering attitude. "What's the background of this guy?" Rosen looked at Luo Yuan Hang up and down through his glasses, with a cold and indifferent expression, but in the end he nodded politely. "I heard, hello. Hello, hello." He quickly stretched out his hand and greeted warmly. Rosen glanced down, stretched out a hand, and shook his hand loosely, just touching his fingers, and then let go. "Where's the car?" "The car is outside, come with me." Leading people to the parking lot with a smile, Zhang Shiwei was full of confusion and looked at the foreign man curiously. He is a Caucasian with curly golden hair. His facial features are not very delicate, but because of his deep contours, he looks quite three-dimensional. From a general aesthetic point of view, he can be considered handsome. Possibly sensing that he was being watched, Rosen looked at Zhang Shiwei and their eyes met. Zhang Shiwei was startled and smiled politely at him. A flash of light flashed on Rosen's lenses. Getting into the car, Rosen sat in the back seat, Zhang Shiwei sat in the passenger seat, and Luo Yuanhang drove. Originally, there was a driver, but in order to show the greatest sincerity, Luo Yuanhang decided to drive and pick him up personally. As he drove the car, he glanced at Rosen from the rearview mirror from time to time. "Mr. Rosen, I will take you to the hotel where you are staying to put your luggage first, and then you can have a rest first. I will hold a reception banquet for you in the evening. Give you a good cleaning." "Yeah," he responded lightly, with a lukewarm look. Even so, Luo Yuanhang's enthusiasm remained undiminished. "I'm really happy that you can come and help. Ms. Yao has already told me that you are also eagerly awaited in the industry. I believe that what our company has encountered this time, the problem is nothing to you." "I'm a little tired, let's talk at night." "Okay," interrupted him, and after finishing speaking, Rosen closed his eyes and leaned back. It was obvious that he didn't want to pay attention to anyone anymore. Luo Yuanhang choked and quickly came to his senses. "Okay, no problem. You can rest first. I'll call you when I get there." His almost flattering remarks made Zhang Shiwei very uncomfortable. She frowned and looked at him, and then looked at Mr. Rosen in the back seat through the rearview mirror. No matter who the other party is, this is too rude, and it is obvious that there is an aura that repels people thousands of miles away. But Luo Yuanhang still wants to please others, and he also wants Ms. Yao in his mouth. Yao. This last name felt very familiar. A light flashed in Zhang Shiwei's mind, and she suddenly thought of a person. "Yuanhang, is the Ms. Yao you are talking about?" Turning her face sideways, she asked in a low voice, but Luo Yuanhang still interrupted her. "Hey." He frowned and shook his head, then indicated the position of the back seat with his eyes, and then said, "You have worked hard these past 2 days, so you can take a rest now, and in the evening, we will give Mr. Rosen a good reception, wash the dust." Zhang Shiwei understood that it was not convenient for him to say it now, so he didn't ask any more questions and nodded. "Then you should drive more carefully." After saying that, she adjusted to a more comfortable position and slept against the window. In the back seat, Rosen slowly opened his eyes. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. Few people know about this relationship. Sent Rosen to the hotel to settle down, and made an appointment to pick him up in the evening before leaving the hotel. When there were only 2 of us, Zhang Shiwei could finally ask all the questions in her mind. "Yuanhang, who is this Mr. Rosen? Why are you so polite to him? I don't think he treats us as the same person at all. What's going on? Is it necessary to please him so much? Why haven't I heard of him being so eager in the industry? Is it just a rumor? You took me toiling for so long just to pick him up, but he didn't do anything when he came. I didn't wait to see if he was really capable before making a decision. What if he is a liar?" She thought about it over and over again. I find Rosen's attitude very unpleasant. You can't be a liar, don't worry, if you can invite him, you're doing it with face. Putting his hands on the steering wheel, Luo Yuanhang let out a long sigh of relief. Although the problem has not been solved so far, it is no longer a big problem for him. Since the people are here, there should be no mistakes. After all, no matter how powerful Suyun is, she is just a little girl who has just been in the industry for a short time. What does she know? She is nothing like this famous artist. A little trick is nothing in the eyes of others. Hearing what he said, Zhang Shiwei suddenly remembered the interrupted question before. By the way, is the Ms. Yao you are talking about, your mother? She tried it carefully. Luo Yuanhang was silent, then nodded. Luo Yuanhang's mother, Yao Ying, remarried many years ago. His stepfather's family was well known, so his mother had to go through a lot of trouble to get married. Being a wealthy wife is not easy. In addition to good looks, brains, and means, other aspects are naturally demanding. Yao Ying was originally a movie queen, but her husband's family didn't like her, so she stopped acting. As for her slutty son, it was even more impossible to keep her with her. For so many years, Luo Yuanhang has been raised by her grandmother's family, and she also takes her biological father's surname. In public or in front of outsiders, she is never called mom. She is always called Ms. Yao unless the relationship is extremely close. Few people know that he has such a mother. Including Su Yun, no one knows. Luo Yuanhang had not had much contact with his mother, and Zhang Shiwei didn't think about it until today when she mentioned Ms. Yao. She suddenly remembered. But after saying this, she felt relieved. Since it was your mother who introduced you, you must feel at ease. Yes, why did I forget about your mother? We are encountering difficulties now, and she cannot ignore you. With her connections and abilities, Su Yun is nothing. Zhang Shiwei was very happy, feeling that all the problems had been solved. I don't want to trouble her unless I have to. She also doesn't want me to trouble her. Lowering his eyes, Luo Yuanhang said in a low voice. Seeing that he was in a bad mood, Zhang Shiwei explained to him, "Hey, she also has her own difficulties. Didn't you also say that she has a lot of control over her in a big family? Now that she is willing to help us, it shows that I still have you as my son in my heart." Maybe he didn't have the confidence to say this. After his mother remarried, she rarely contacted him and cared about him. Occasionally she would buy him some fresh things when she went back to her grandmother's house, but he rarely saw a smile on her face. He knew that his mother would have children after she got married, and he also knew that he would never be able to legitimately recognize this mother in his life, but he just wanted to hold his breath and make some achievements, and let her see that without her, he would be still living well. Seeing that he was about to become famous, he didn't expect that his car overturned in the gutter, and now he needed her help. When she called, he was surprised, but he had no reason to refuse. This Lawson, I hope he can turn the tide and turn the company around. At night, when I went to pick up Rosen, Zhang Shiwei's attitude was obviously different. Before, she was not sure whether he was a liar, or how much real ability he had, but when Luo Yuanhang said that it was his mother who introduced him to help, she felt reassured. Who is Ms. Yao? In the serious upper-class society in the capital, the people she comes into contact with and the circles she is involved in are destined to know no ordinary people. So she absolutely believed that this Rosen could help them. Mr. Rosen, we would really appreciate your help. Zhang Shiwei took the initiative to pour him wine. She was wearing a burgundy tube-top dress, which was almost the same as the red wine in the bottle. When she bent down, the whiteness of her chest formed a strong contrast with the bright color of the red wine, which was extremely beautiful. Faced with the two people's attentiveness, Rosen just raised his eyebrows and said, "I owe Ms. Yao a favor. I will definitely do what I promise." Yes, Luo Yuanhang nodded repeatedly. This matter should be a trivial matter for Mr. Rosen. But no matter what, we are still very grateful to you. Sipping the red wine, he slowly raised his eyelids and glanced at Zhang Shiwei. His eyes slowly slid down from her forehead, to the tip of her nose, lips, chin, and finally settled on the chest of her little dress. Luo Yuanhang. He suddenly felt a little unhappy, but because of his status and the fact that he had something to ask for, he just shook his chopsticks and didn't say anything. "Are you a perfumer too?" Rosen asked. Zhang Shiwei was stunned for a moment, then nodded quickly. Yes, we are peers. But I can't compare with you. You are the master, and I can only be regarded as a little apprentice. She laughed along with him, trying to keep her posture as low as possible, showing a very humble look. Have you not won many awards and released several famous perfumes? He looked nonchalantly as he picked up the wine glass. Zhang Shiwei didn't understand what he meant and subconsciously looked at Luo Yuanhang, who was also confused. That was all a fluke. I still have a lot to learn, and I should learn more from you, Zhang Shiwei replied. A fluke, he sneered, with sarcasm in his smile. In our industry, we have talent, hard work, opportunities, and connections, but there is no luck. This. Zhang Shiwei was very embarrassed when he said this and didn't know what to say. Since you are considered a semi-senior, can't you tell the difference in just a little bit of formula? Every word of Rosen's words was so sharp, and his eyes towards her were also scrutinizing. This made Zhang Shiwei feel uncomfortable all over. She was on pins and needles, biting her lower lip gently, her face flushed. Mr. Rosen, actually it's not that I can't tell the difference, but it's Su-Yun who is too cunning, she said angrily. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. So arrogant. Oh, Rosen raised his eyebrows, non-committal. You also know that there are slight differences in the ingredients and weights used in perfumery, which will produce different final results. Su-Yun not only tampered with the formula, but also asked her assistant to secretly change the formula, and I haven't been in good health recently and I have a slight cold, so they took advantage of me. I have to ask Mr. Rosen. When she said this, her eyes dropped and she was about to cry. Looking so pitiful and pitiful, it's really heartbreaking. Rosen looked at her face and tapped his fingers lightly on the table. He didn't know what he was thinking or how much he believed her words. Luo Yuanhang came to his senses and quickly helped. Yes. Mr. Rosen, you don't know that Wei Wei has been working too hard recently because of the company's affairs, so she was so busy that she even fell ill. Su-Yun just caught it right. I took advantage of this opportunity. There have been a lot of orders in the factory recently. If we can't deliver the goods because of this, our company will be really in danger. Okay, let's go to the laboratory and take a look. After wiping his mouth, he finally spoke. These words made the two of them secretly let out a long sigh of relief. Since he agreed, it means there is hope for the matter. With his attitude just now, I was really afraid that he would suddenly give up. Without further ado, Luo Yuanhang immediately stood up to pay the bill, drove his car and took people straight to the laboratory. In the past 2 days, almost all the staff in the laboratory lived and ate there. It's not that they are incompetent, it's just that they are too tricky. Even if they find the difference in the materials used, they have to be precise in the dosage, otherwise they will come out. The results will still be different. Laymen may not care much about this subtle difference in taste, but those who have used perfume for a long time, especially those who are old customers, will be very keen. Once something goes wrong, it will basically damage your own brand. Wulan is not an easy brand to build. If it falls over, there will be no way to turn around. The three of them went into the laboratory one by one and looked at it. Not surprisingly, there was no progress. When we entered the next laboratory, it was empty and no one was there. Where is Wu Arian? Pointing to the laboratory, Zhang Shiwei immediately recognized who should be here. Arian, she said she was too tired and wanted to go home and rest first. Another employee answered cautiously. What's the point? She still has the heart to go home and rest. Does she really not take her work and company seriously? Zhang Shiwei scolded angrily. On the side, Luo Yuanhang said calmly, don't be too angry. Since she is so irresponsible, there is no point in forcing her to stay, just fire her. Small issues, let's talk about it later. After finishing speaking, He turned to look at the person next to him. Mr. Rosen, in that case, how about using this laboratory? Rosen didn't answer and walked straight in. Where's the essential oil? He looked at it briefly and then asked. Luo Yuanhang quickly waved to his assistant. Quick, essential oil. Brought it over quickly and delivered it directly to Rosen. He asked again, where is the formula? This time, the formula was delivered faster, and even the previous finished products and some of the current results were also delivered. Rosen couldn't see any change on his face, so he leaned closer to smell the scent of the essential oil, frowning slightly, and then glanced at the formula a few more times, with a faint smile on the corner of his lips. Little trick. So, Mr. Rosen knows how to adjust. Although his voice was not loud, Luo Yuanhang still heard him and asked excitedly. Adjust? No, no need to adjust. Because, it's not the formula at all. He waved his hand, and as soon as his fingers relaxed, the formula fell to the ground. Not this recipe. Let alone Luo Yuanhang, everyone present was stunned. Impossible. We have tried it many times, and the taste is very close, with only slight differences. If it weren't for this recipe, how could it be so close? Someone raised a question. This man was brought here by Mr. Luo, but he didn't know his background, but his statement made everyone deny it. Rosen smiled contemptuously. If I say no, it's not. He didn't even bother to explain, and he was so confident, arrogant. Mr. Luo, it's impossible. So many of us have been trying for so long. Although we haven't figured it out yet, the formula is definitely just a single ingredient. If we try it again, we will definitely get the result soon. Both sides held different opinions, and Luo Yuanhang was confused for a moment. Did Rosen make a mistake? It's taken so long to get results and you still need to try again? Waste is waste. No matter how long you give it, it won't change the fact that it's waste. Rosen's words didn't save any dignity at all, they were arrogant. His words also succeeded in irritating everyone, and they stared at him angrily. What did you say? Hey! Luo Yuanhang stopped him. Don't be angry. The key now is to find out the problem. Whether it's Mr. Rosen or all of you, whoever can make the essential oils the same as before is the boss of the company. The meritorious officials will be rewarded heavily. He was trying to persuade him to make peace, and he was also hinting to Rosen. He had to do it in order to get corresponding rewards. Mr. Luo, I think the several models we have tested are already very close. As long as we give it a little more time, they will definitely be as good as the previous ones. Before he could finish what he said, Rosen handed over a piece of paper. Just as they were talking, he wrote in a few strokes, made according to this new recipe. Luo Yuanhang took it, with a look of disbelief on his face. Other staff members beside him also curiously poked their heads over to see who he was, so arrogant. However, after just one glance, I was dumbfounded and asked, what is this word? French. Putting down his pen, Rosen clapped his hands and said matter-of-factly, I'm used to using French, and I'm not used to using your words, and I don't know how to use them. You can find a translator who can speak French, that's it. After saying that, he walked to Luo Yuanhang and stood in front of him. Can you go back to the hotel? I'm tired. Okay, but this. Holding the piece of paper, the baby was full of doubts. He knew a little bit about French and could probably understand a little bit, but could this recipe really work? Moreover, the people in the laboratory have been debugging it for so long. He didn't even try it and just insisted that it was okay. But no matter what, now in front of so many people, he couldn't question the people he brought, so he folded the formula and put it in his arms. Okay, if Mr. Rosen says there is no problem, then there must be no problem. You have worked hard these days, so go back and rest. Also, find me a professional French translator as soon as possible. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, She is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. Those who are purified will purify themselves, I don't care. Luo Yuanhang was busy working on essential oils non-stop. He was so busy that he had no time to think about the lawsuit with Suyun. At this time, Suyun had officially started a new work schedule. Compared with the uproar before, Wulan's withdrawal of the lawsuit came quietly. People who were interested in melons were still holding their breath and waiting to see the final result. Suddenly, it was so silent, which made people very uncomfortable. Controversy exists. Some people say that Wulan was in the wrong, so she dropped the lawsuit. Others say that Wulan was generous and let her go. Faced with many doubts, Suyun left 8 words on Weibo: those who purify themselves will ching, I don't care. Just these 8 simple words, but they inexplicably attracted a lot of fans to her. Suyun doesn't care much about the turmoil on the internet. She is not a celebrity, nor does she belong to the fan circle. She focuses on the work at hand and constantly comes up with new products. Suyun, are you doing anything at home these days? Early in the morning, Zhao Xian called her into the office and asked her straightforwardly. No, it's okay. Suyun was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand why she suddenly asked about home. Zhao Xian nodded and said, that's good. If you have something to do at home, make arrangements as soon as possible. I will take you on a business trip. Business trip? Where to go? She has just started working and can she go on a business trip? Southern Yunnan. She took out an invitation letter. There is a perfume tasting conference there. In addition, the geographical environment there is special and there are many natural spices, so you can do some material collection. Suyun did not agree immediately. She naturally wanted to go, but after all, she had to be away for several days. She definitely wanted to tell Si Yao about this. Suyun, seeing that she didn't respond, Zhao Xian called her several times, are you okay? Don't want to go? No, she shook her head and said, of course I don't want to miss such a good opportunity. However, I have just joined the company not long ago. Isn't Manager Zhao afraid that I won't do well with such a good opportunity? It's just a tasting meeting, what are you doing well and what's not? Besides, I can see your ability. In our industry, qualifications are important, but talent is also very important. Not everyone can take advantage of this. What she said was the truth. Although there were many people in the project department, there were only a few who could really be considered perfumers. Apart from her, there is no one else who can be considered to be of high quality. Let alone the whole country, if you look at the whole world, the food in this industry is not that delicious. However, Suyun is different. She was talented and capable. Even though she didn't like her at first and felt that she must have some background as an airborne soldier, she was convinced by these few tests. Thank you, Manager Zhao, for your affirmation. Zhao Xian rolled his eyes at her and said, why are you talking about this? I asked you to come with me. Of course you are doing serious business. You can pack up in these 2 days and we will set off the day after tomorrow. Okay. She wanted to say it so quickly, but the time for this kind of thing was arranged. Because I had to prepare for a business trip, I went home from get off work very early. She went back early today and Si Yao hadn't come back yet, so the house was quiet. Putting on comfortable slippers, turning on the stereo, playing soothing music, and making a pot of fruit tea, she enjoyed the atmosphere. She had never told Si Yao that she actually liked quietness and disliked the hustle and bustle of many people. She originally thought that a person like him must be surrounded by many servants and there must be people coming and going at home, but she didn't. Come to think of it, he is really a breath of fresh air. Except for the occasional part-time cleaner, she doesn't need anyone else. The house is extremely quiet, and she does all the cooking herself. Although it's a bit deserted, she likes the feeling of not being disturbed. The fruit tea was slowly baking on the alcohol lamp. There were a few snacks on the delicate little plate beside it. Yao was determined not to allow her to enter the kitchen, so she had no choice but to give up the idea and sit here honestly. On the coffee table in front of him, 7 or 8 bottles of perfume were placed in one color. There were various small bottles, all of which were new models that had just been launched recently. Prepare a glass of water, paper towels, and mint, and then sit in silence for a while. Maybe it's because I've been struggling with Luo Yuanhang and the others recently. It's hard to calm down and my mind is impetuous. Naturally, I have no inspiration and no desire to create new products. It is not possible to continue like this. The more it is consumed, the emptier it becomes. Without replenishment, the original foundation will soon be worn away. The opportunity Zhao Xian gave me for this business trip is quite good. I can just go out and have a look, and I may also get new creative inspiration. Slowly opening her eyes, the small bottles in front of her were quite cute. She picked up a pink bottle, and before she even opened the bottle cap, she could smell the overflowing fragrance. It was very rich, so rich that it even a little bit pungent. I suddenly lost the desire to open it and put it down again. These bottles are not big brands, they are all miscellaneous brands from small stores. However, it does not have to be a big brand to bring ideas. Often, some unknown small brands may have unexpected gains. Withdrawing her hand, her fingers were already stained with the smell of the perfume. She washed her hands carefully, dried them, sat down again, and picked up another bottle. There is also a small notepad at hand, where I write down my thoughts and analysis of ingredients. It is quite fulfilling to be busy. Yao returned home. Before he even entered the door, he was repelled by a particularly strong smell. He backed away and sneezed several times while standing outside the door. "You're back," hearing his voice, Suyun trotted over, her hands that had just been tested on the perfume and not yet washed open, as if she was running towards him for a hug. Just about to respond, but as soon as she got closer, her nose twitched uncontrollably and she sneezed one after another. Stopping, Suyun looked at him sneezing all over the place, lowered her head and smelled herself. "Did it get to you? I'm going to wash up right now." After saying that, she turned around and ran back. Yao stood at the door for a while and waited for a while before entering. He saw that she had washed her hands, wrapped small bottles in paper towels, threw them into the trash can, and tied the mouths of the bags. "Are you doing experiments at home?" Yao asked her while opening the windows to diffuse the smell. "It's not an experiment, it's just to learn about the new products currently on the market and see if there are any gains." She waved her hand to make the smell in the air evaporate faster. "So, is there anything gained?" Yao took out a tissue and wiped his nose. He felt like he was about to catch a cold. "The reward is, old wine in a new bottle. The soup is changed without changing the medicine, but in the end it's still the same thing." She shrugged, expressing her disappointment. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 59. Chapter 59. The way he looks at you is unusual. It may be said that it is a new product, but it is still the same formula as before. At most, there is only a slight adjustment in the weight ratio. There is nothing new, which is quite disappointing. At first, I thought that there would be unexpected gains, but as expected, this kind of thing still requires good luck. If it were so easy to gain something and have surprises, senior perfumers wouldn't be satisfied with the street. Yao grabbed her and put her in his arms. "Have you eaten yet?" "I've eaten," she replied. After seeing his eyes, she quickly explained, "I didn't go into the kitchen." I got off work early today and ate something outside. You didn't wait for me. He narrowed his eyes, and his tone was a bit sad. I was hungry at the time. It was obviously a small matter, but I felt guilty as if I had made a big mistake. Soo-yoon glanced at him and said, "You haven't eaten yet? How about I order you some takeout?" Speaking, she planned to take out her mobile phone and order takeout. "I don't want takeout, come eat out with me." "But I've eaten it." Si-Yao showed a proud smile, "Then eat with me." His arms couldn't hold his thighs up, so he had to pull her out to eat together. What Soo-yoon thought before she came out was that I had eaten it anyway, so the worst thing she could do was watch him eat it. After she came out, well, it smells so delicious. It's already the third plate of Wajio, but I still can't stop eating it with my chopsticks. It's so delicious. Looking at her enjoying her meal, Si-Yao just took a few sips of wine slowly and ate gracefully and elegantly. In comparison, he seemed like the one who had already eaten to keep her company. "Do you want more?" he asked thoughtfully. "No. No more," she waved her hands and exhaled, "I can't eat any more, I'll die if I eat any more." "How about some more candied hawthorn to help you feel better?" He raised his eyebrows and asked friendly. "Where have I offended you? You can tell me clearly why you used such a cruel method of supporting me to death." I touched my stomach with one hand and felt that it was already round. "I really ate too much today. It seems like I'm saying, come and eat with me, but some people can't control their mouths, so do you blame me?" He put down his chopsticks and said meaningfully. "Soo-yoon." It's true that she couldn't control her mouth, but if he hadn't forced her to come to this newly opened restaurant, and the smell of the food was so tempting to her, how could she not resist the temptation and eat so much? "It's weird, of course it's your fault, thinking of this," she said confidently. Si-Yao nodded, thoughtfully, "So, if someone goes on a business trip and doesn't even say hello, is it my fault?" "Strange." Soo-yoon choked and looked at him with wide eyes. "How do you know?" As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I felt that I had asked a stupid question. How could he not know it? "Hey, it's not good to work in the same company as your husband, especially since he is your boss. He will know immediately if you have any trouble." Sighed, she looked aggrieved. "Since you know, you should understand that this is the company's arrangement. As a small employee, of course I can only obey the arrangement. Why do I feel a little resentful when I hear this, if you don't want to go?" Before he could finish his words, Soo-yoon quickly interrupted, "Who said I don't want to go? I haven't had time to tell you, it's not that I didn't say hello. There is a big temperature difference between morning and evening in southern Yunnan, so remember to bring a coat," he warned, and stopped talking about this topic. Soo-yoon was actually quite surprised. She thought he would put forward different opinions, but she didn't expect it to go so smoothly. But also, since it was arranged by the company, he must have known about it earlier. Thinking about it, I was worried that he would disagree. How silly. Si-Yao didn't have any special reaction to the fact that she was going on a business trip, which made Soo-yoon relieved. With such a good start, it would be more convenient to do things in the future. After all, her job is said to be stable, but she also has to travel out from time to time to collect materials, find inspiration, and go out to participate in some exchange meetings to learn from the experience of her predecessors. If Si-Yao was not allowed to go on an ordinary business trip, it would be even more difficult in the future. He did not restrict her freedom, which greatly increased her favorability. "I disagree." Looking ahead, Luo Yuanhang flatly refused. Zhang Shiwei, who was leaning against him, frowned and pestered him coquettishly. "Yuanhang, don't do this. I know you can't let me go, but this is a good opportunity. Think about it, I haven't participated in this in a long time. There will be a species tasting, not to mention, Mr. Rosen will be with us this time, so it will be even more. Even with him, I disagree even more. Interrupting her, Luo Yuanhang said, anyway, you are not allowed to go this time. Who will go if I don't go, will you? What about the essential oils, the formula? What about the company? Besides me, is there anyone more suitable to go? Or, you have a new person, you want to praise the new guy, don't you want me? She immediately yelled and lost her temper. Who is it? Is it the little girl named Nini in the company? I think you are looking at her wrong. Frowning deeply, Luo Yuanhang scolded, what nonsense are you talking about? Who else could there be besides you, little girl? I don't know who you are talking about. If that's not the case, why don't you let me go? She pouted, holding his arm and shaking it. Yuanhang, I want to go. And I'm not doing it for myself, this time I'm representing Wulan. If we can open up the market in southern Yunnan, supply will be more convenient and sales channels will be broadened. Besides, the company is short of talents now. Maybe I can find something for you this time. Turning her head to look at him, Luo Yuanhang's watery eyes blinked and blinked. The soft and cute look made Luo Yuanhang's heart soften. This little woman understands him so well and can manipulate his heart so well that she always makes him soften unconsciously, and her tone of voice softens. Why Wei, it's not that I don't want you to go, if I have time to accompany you go, then go. But I don't have time now, so I don't worry about letting you go by yourself. Who said I would go by myself? Didn't I say that I would go with Mr. Rosen? He was also invited, and he is a distinguished guest. There must be benefits to following him, Zhang Shiwei said happily. It's because of him that I disagree even more. The voice suddenly became louder, and Luo Yuanhang was very angry. Why Wei, don't you think the way he looks at you is unusual? Zhang Shiwei. After being stunned for a moment, she thought about it and said, oh, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. Besides, he was introduced by your mother, and he's a celebrity, so how could he be like you think? You think everyone loves me as much as you do? I think you're overthinking it. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 60. Chapter 60. I may have it. Luo Yuanhang smiled helplessly. You also know that I treat you as a treasure, so don't be willful, okay? Anyway, I don't like the way he looks at you. Hearing such jealous words, a woman would be happy. Zhang Shiwei narrowed her eyes with a smile and crawled into his arms. Are you jealous? I haven't seen you jealous for me for a long time. I can't so happy. Then I think I should go with Mr. Rosen, she said half jokingly. You dare? Luo Yuanhang opened his arms around her neck and said fiercely, you dare to run away with him? Believe it or not, I will break your legs. So fierce, Zhang Shiwei stuck out her tongue, seeming to remember something, and looked a little shy. Actually, don't worry, even if Mr. Rosen really means something to me, there will be nothing wrong with me. Especially, now. What do you mean? Luo Yuanhang didn't understand. She looked at him affectionately, picked up one of his hands, then gently placed it on her lower abdomen, and pressed it a little harder. I might have it? Have. At first, Luo Yuanhang didn't realize what it meant. When he came to his senses, the strength on his hand immediately increased unconsciously, and with an excited voice, you have it. You have it? Yes, you have it. Is the child mine? He was as excited as a child. Zhang Shiwei gave him a slightly angry slap. Nonsense. If it's not yours, who else could it be? Yes, 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 I'm going to be a father, I have a son. He was so happy that he kept touching her belly with his palm, as if he could touch the child. Don't move, I just said it's possible, I'm not sure yet. Uncertain. Zhang Shiwei nodded, yes. It's been half a month since my period and I haven't come yet, and I've been feeling a little nauseous lately. I bought test strips and checked. It may be possible. If it's there, it's there, if it's not there, it's not there. What does it mean that it's possible? For a man, this is quite difficult to understand. You didn't go to the hospital to check. It's still early. I heard that it's too early to go to the hospital and nothing can be found. The test strip shows 2 lines. Although it's not very obvious, I think it should be. I'll go to the hospital to check in a few days, she said gently. Luo Yuanhang nodded repeatedly, okay. Okay. That's right. Then you should stop running around recently. He changed the topic and returned to this issue. Zhang Shiwei immediately became unhappy and left his arms with a raised eyebrow. I don't. It's so hard to get such an opportunity. You know that if I really get it, I won't be able to do it again for at least 1 or 2 years. I'm running around and can't participate in various activities. If I don't go now, I will definitely regret it. Facing her coquettishness, Luo Yuanhang was really unable to resist. What's more, knowing that she was pregnant, he didn't want to argue with her. But stop it, I've already been like this, why can't you accommodate me just once? No matter what, I'll listen to you from now on, isn't that okay? She coaxed him softly. After being together for so long, she already knew his intentions. Where is the weakness? When he and Suyun were still together, she knew exactly what his temper was and she won him over soon. In the palm of her hand, he could not turn anything upside down, and he would always be obedient to her. Sure enough, before even a few words of coquettishness, Luo Yuanhang couldn't resist any more and raised his hands in surrender. Okay, okay, I promise you. But you have to promise not to get too close to that Rosen. I will send someone to go with you. You don't believe me, I was quite happy at first, but when I heard the next words, I suddenly became serious again. It's not that I don't believe it, I'm here to protect you. If he has any plans for you, or if you encounter any danger outside, at least there will be someone to take care of you, right? Zhang Shiwei twisted her waist. You just don't believe me anyway. That's not what I meant. If you want to go, just go. That's it. No more opportunities for her to act coquettishly and argue. This was Luo Yuanhang's final bottom line. In fact, from the bottom of his heart, he wanted to go. He heard that there were quite a few professional perfumers here this time. In addition to wanting to participate, he also wanted to recruit some talents to come back. Suyun's incident caused him a big setback. He was particularly aware of the importance of talents. He had to recruit more talents so that the operation of the company would not be affected whenever someone dropped the job. It was terrible. But unfortunately this time something went wrong with the essential oil. After struggling so far, he must not let anything go wrong again. He had to see it himself, so he couldn't get away. It doesn't matter if Wei Wei wants to go, she will go and see things, and she can help him to some extent in the future. She is not as qualified as Suyun, but at least she is loyal to herself, and now that she has his child, she is even more relieved. Thinking of the child, I glanced at her belly. Although it was still flat, she was already pregnant with a little life, and I couldn't help but feel happy. Compared to his happy mood, Zhang Shiwei was not so happy. She was going out to play, and there was a tail behind her. Besides, what does Mr. Rosen think? Forget it, it doesn't make sense now, just take it one step at a time. Si Yao didn't see Suyun off on the day she went on a business trip. Considering that she was afraid of being seen, she insisted on taking a taxi with her suitcase, and even refused to let her family driver drive her off. Before leaving, perhaps to appease someone who was resentful, he opened his arms for a hug, and said with a sense of humor, "A farewell is better than a wedding. I will be back soon, so don't mess around with others." Each other, Si Yao hugged her and pinched her waist in retaliation. This man is really awesome. She got in the car and rushed to the airport. Si Yao stood there and watched her car go away. Su Feng, who had been silent as a stone statue, took 2 steps forward and said, "President, really don't tell madam, you have to go there too. Do you think that would be fun?" She tilted her head, looked at him, and asked lazily. Su Feng, fun. Why didn't he know when his boss became so playful? Has the cabin been upgraded? He asked while turning around and walking back. Promoted, and manager Shao has also been promoted. According to your instructions, I told them that the company attaches great importance to this trip and specially arranged it, Su Feng said diligently. In order to appear very reasonable, I specially found Wang Shuo and asked him to handle this matter. Hunted lightly, he walked back to the house. The huge house was empty. Why was it so deserted? End of this chapter.